Hey everyone, today we are going to deep dive into another very important topic in Python, which is functions. So, if you want to write an efficient code, a reusable code, and a structured code, function is the thing that you need to learn. So, let's get started. So, let's say you want to calculate factorial in your code. So, you have already written the logic for calculating factorial. But the catch here is that in your code, you are calculating factorial at multiple places. So, what you'll probably do is, if you don't know about functions, you would go ahead and copy paste the code of factorial that you have written earlier and paste it wherever it's required later in your code. But then there's a better way to do it, and that's by using functions. So, what is a function? A function is a block of code which does specific tasks. A function takes certain inputs and it gives an output. So let's go ahead and see the syntax of a function. So the syntax would be, if you want to create a function or define a function, you would say def is the keyword, followed by the name that you want to give to your function. This name could be anything, followed by parenthesis. And inside the parenthesis, you would pass the inputs or the parameters that the function takes. Then you have colon, and then the block of code, which is of course properly indented. This block of code belongs to this function here. So let's go ahead and write our first function. Maybe let's just call that function greetings because I just want to print from this function hello world. So now I'm not taking any input from the user. Here I'll just say print hello world. This statement here belongs to this function as it is properly indented. So let's go ahead and run this function. But nothing happened. You see, I wrote print hello world, but nothing is getting printed here. So what's going on? So we have basically created the function here or declared the function here. So Python now knows once I've executed this, that this function exists, but I've not called this function. So for me to run this function, I need to call this function. How do we call a function? We call the function by their name. So what is the name of this function? Greetings, followed by parenthesis. So this is important whenever you are calling the function name has to be followed by parenthesis. And what this is going to do, it is going to call this function. So when you say greetings, parenthesis, it will call this function and all the statements that you have inside this function will be executed. So this is printing hello world. Once the function has been called, the control goes back to the calling statement. So once this function has been called and these lines have been executed, the control goes back here. So in case I have something written down here, maybe I'm saying print awesome. Now, what will happen when I'm calling this function? The greetings get called here, hello world gets printed, and then the control goes back here. And the next line is executed, which is awesome. I've created this function. I can call it as many times as I want. So let me demonstrate that. I'm calling this function again, the greetings. That's great. It's giving me hello world, awesome, and then one more time hello world. Why? Because I'm calling this greeting one more time. That means that this function here is making my code reusable. Whenever I have to calculate, let's say use factorial, coming back to our previous example, I can just write a function for factorial and call it at whatever places in my code the factorial logic is required. So how great is that? not only it is making your code reusable, it is also giving it structure. If tomorrow you need to change something in your factorial code or the greetings code, you know where it has to be changed. You just have to change it at one place. And the change reflects wherever this particular function is being called. Now, let's say in this, we are simply printing hello world. But let's say I want to print hello and I want to take the name as an input from the user. So, in the definition of this function, I can give a parameter. It will take one parameter, one input. That parameter is name of the person. I can call it n, I can call it name, whatever I like. It is always advisable to keep variable names intuitive so that it's easier for you to understand what's going on. But this could be anything. You can call it n if you like. So let's just go ahead and call it name. And I'll have a f string here and probably something like this. So I'm printing the name which is passed. Let's run it. Now, when I call greetings with this new definition of greetings function, so what did I tell you? How do you call a function? You give the function name followed by the parenthesis. If I just run it as it will give me an error. What does the error say? It is giving me type error. Greeting missing one required positional argument name. Why is it giving me that error? It was not giving me this error previously when I ran this code. Because now in the greetings, I'm also passing this name. So basically, the greetings function expects one input. It expects one input to be passed. So that is name. So I can directly pass the input here. So I'm passing this string here and it is giving me hello Aryan. I could have also created a variable, let's say n is equal to, and then called my greetings and pass this n variable. This would also do. Now, did you notice one thing? That I'm not saying what is the data type of this name variable. So it could accept any data type, value of any data type. Of course, if let's say you are expecting that, let's say in your function, you have this name and maybe you are doing name dot upper and you pass a integer, and of course, this will give you an error. Why? Because the integer doesn't have any upper function. So let me demonstrate that as well. So let's say greetings. So right now we're just printing whatever is passed in this name variable. So it doesn't matter if I pass an integer here, it will just print hello 1, 2. If I pass a list here, it will just print that. But if I'm expecting that the user will pass a name and name is a string data type, and maybe I'm using some string function here, like upper, converting the name to uppercase. Now, if I pass Aryan and Ravi, that's fine. It is converting it to uppercase and giving me this. But if I pass this list or even number integer here, it will give me an attribute error. It says that int object has no attribute upper. It simply means that for int, there is no function called upper. It doesn't support this function. So yeah, this is the wrong data type. What about, let's say I want to say hello name, and then maybe I want to also take age as an input from the user. And maybe in the next line, I want to print age. So let's go ahead and run it. And now this time when I call this function greetings and just pass Aryan, what will happen? It will again give me error. Why? Because it is now expecting me to pass two values, the name and the age, while I've only passed one value. So I need to pass one more. And now this worked fine, but there was this one, the second call also. So here also I need to pass the age value as well. So Name variable here would hold the value Aryan, age will take the value 20. Now, to understand function better, let's write one more function. Maybe we want to take two inputs and sum them. We want to take two integers as an input and return the sum of the two numbers. So let's create a function called sum underscore, and it takes two inputs a comma b, and it basically prints sum of a and b, a plus b. Now to call this function, you give the function name and then the values. So for values, let's have two more variables. So 10, y is 20, and let's just pass x and y. And if we run it, we get 30. That's the expected output. But what if I want to use this 30 later on somewhere in my code? Maybe I want to then multiply it by 50 or some other number. So what to do? I mean, I'm just printing the a plus b here. So right now, if I just check what this sum function is returning. So every function returns a value. So I want to check what this sum function is returning. So let's take the return value in a variable output. So now if I print output, it's returning none value. You see, nothing. It's returning none. Now, if you want to return 30 instead, you just don't want to print it, but you want to return that value so that you can use it later in your code, you have to use return keyword. So return and then whatever value you want to return. So I want to return a plus b. Or you can save it in a variable if you like. You can say c is equal to a plus b, and then you can go ahead and return c. So now if you run it, the output here will have the value 30. Why? Because this return c will return this value c, and that would be captured by this variable output here. Now, is this the first time that we are looking at functions in Python? No, we have already used a lot of functions. We have called functions in Python without really understanding in detail what functions are so far. So when we were using other functions like print function, we were using len function to calculate the length of the iterable list string. We were using input function. We were using int function and many other such functions we were using without realizing what was going on behind the scenes. So what we were doing when we said print, hello, we were calling the print function. The print function already exists. Somebody else has written the code for it. The functions we have been writing by ourselves, right? The function definitions we have written here, the greetings, the sum underscore, these are user-defined functions. We have written these functions. So far, we were just calling a function, a pre-existing function. Now we know how to write our own function and call them as well. Okay, so let's look through another example. Let's say we want to compute a grade of a student based on the marks. So let's create a function for this. So def grade calculator is what I'm calling my function. You can give whatever name you like, passing marks. And then we have to check the condition. You have to check if marks is greater than equal to 80. We can return the grade as A. This is a string data type because it's enclosed in quotes here. Elif, the second condition we want to check is marks is greater than equal to 60. Then we want to return the grade as B, and else for marks lower than 60, the grade is C. So now what's going on here? We are basically checking the marks of the student. We are saying if it's greater than 80, return A. So the control will go to the calling statement and A will be returned. If let's say this condition is false, only then this would be checked. If this condition is false, that means the marks is not greater than 80, but it could be between 60 and 80. So this condition would be checked. If this condition is true, then it will return B. If both the conditions are false, marks is not greater than equal to 80 also and not greater than equal to 60. Marks have to be lower than 60 then in that scenario, and the grade returned is C. So let's call this function and look at the output here. First, we need to run this and then grade underscore calculator. And let's just pass 90 here and it's returning A. If you want to capture the grade in some variable so that later on we can use it in our code, we can do this and then print grade. So yeah, it worked. Let's just try for another one. Maybe I'll just call this again for marks as 50. And if you check what is the value in the grade variable, it is C. Awesome, guys. You just learned the basics of functions in Python, what they are, how to pass arguments, the return statement, and different types of function, the inbuilt function and the user-defined function. In the next video, we'll go deeper into different types of function arguments. See you next time. Thank you for joining.